Hi there. It's So Steady's Facebook Live, Sundays with Kate Quinn. And I have our featured item up, and I've done some fun thread play on it, just to give you a little bit of a flavor of where we're going. If you can see well and you can hear me, go ahead and give me a thumbs up so I can see who's out there and I can say hello. So when I started working with the Westalee templates, Leonie West published an amazing video, and it was a couple, I think 2 parts maybe, and it featured the artisan curves using the circle shape. And it was amazing, amazing. My mouth dropped open and I just was like, oh my gosh, I have to try that. So I did, and it turned out awesome, and I've loved it ever since. And that was also the very first time that I ever saw her do the template technique. And I wonder, I think that might have been when she, in fact, introduced that technique, was with her Artisan Curves video. So they are designed to essentially work in a circle kind of a space. That doesn't mean we couldn't square this off and just end the designs in a square, but because they pivot around that center pin, that is the shapes that they make. They tend to make something in a circle. So gosh, we have lots of great people. Hi, I see so many familiar names. Ruth, welcome. I haven't seen your name before. So nice to see you here. Patsy, nice to see you.
Lots of great people.
Barb. So let's show the templates really quick. I'm going to pull a few of them up here so you can get a flavor for what they look like. This one is the curved Marquee number 85, and they're all different numbers, but what you really want to look at is the actual size of the template, like how big the opening is, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. And then this is the circle shape, right? So that's obviously just a circle. This one is new to me. So this is one of the ones we're featuring. This is called the iris shape. And then here's just some examples of some variety within that. So this is obviously a much bigger circle, and we'll talk about why the different sizes matter. I'll show you some examples. And then this is a really tiny iris. So the iris has kind of a pointy tulip top like that, and then it has a round bottom. And just the size here, this is a little more oval shape on the bottom, whereas this is like a little tiny circle on the bottom. So we're going to be sharing some designs. I'm going to actually put these kind of back in order because I actually have them in an order for how I'm going to use them. So I won't be fumbling around quite as much as I normally do. So one thing that I want to tell you when you start, you have to use the crosshair squares. Before we do anything, the markings here are critical for you to be able to use this template and to make major designs with it. So everything around the Artisan Curves is focused on using a segment, a pie wedge, and then you'll travel from pie wedge to pie wedge, and then you'll make a different design. So I've got just a little bit right here that I've got set up, and I'm just going to show you the alignment with just 1 or 2 of the templates, and then we're going to make the design that you saw. So obviously we need our centering pin, so I will put that on. So just a reminder, I like to push it through on the front. Otherwise, I'm trying to fish around on the back and trying to figure out where he is. So, there he is. And then it usually makes a little hole that I can see. And then I can try to make sure I get everybody on the front lined up with just a little bit of smushing. Okay? So let me show you just one of these circles, because I think that's very easy to see how you line things up. All these numbers right here, they tell you how far away from the center that you're going to be, right? And so if I want a design that is really close, See if I can get these lined up. Oh, darn it. You guys, I'm fumbling around. My pin fell out. There we go. All right, so let me get this on here. You can kind of stick your finger under there and hold that pin so you can get lined up. Oh my goodness. Here we go. We'll do it this way. Okay, I got it. All right. So on this one, this is the 8-point crosshair, and I went ahead and I put a second set of lines. So there's 16 reference lines around this. And I'm just going to make one round with this circle. So we'll just line it up right at the top. So this is the reference line right there. Here, we'll turn it for you. Okay. Now you can see that I've got these other ones that are in view right here, this one and this one. The way that the Artisan curves are going to work is you have to be able to put your template on the line. Now I can put it up here or down there. It's totally up to me. We'll start right up here on this line. It's aligned on the center, but the needle is going to go out there. And that's going to let us sew along this shape until we get over to here. That way we can get a good bit of the circle instead of just this tiny little arc down here. We're going to get more. All right, so let's put this on, get lined up right on that line. And I'll hold these threads back here so we get a nice clean stitch. Now we are going to sew back to where we started. So I'll go ahead and stop right on the line right here. So I'm right on my crosshair line. Once I do that, I can go ahead and pivot to the next line. So you're going to get this guy lined up. And I have the ability then to do the same thing. Let me get those threads out of there. So they're out of our way. So you can see right here I'm lined up. And I'm going to sew around to the next crosshair line right there. All right, if I'm off, remember the camera's in front of me. So I think I'm sewing a little too far. Okay, I'm going to fudge it. Ready? Here we go. This will all quilt out. Don't worry. So there we go. Right on the line this time. So you can see that he fell right into place this time since I wasn't overshooting it or whatever. And one of the things that I like about, we use this top line instead of the bottom of the curve. So if we had done this down here, we would just get the little U shape as it went around. But because we used the top and he sewed outside here and then came back to the line, we're getting this really fun overlap, which I think looks really cool. So we're sewing right now on the bottom of our Artisan curve template, right? But we can also sew on the top. So I would finish this, I wouldn't try to switch right in the middle here since we've already created this pattern. But if you wanted to, you could do one to the bottom and then one to the top, and that would create a different pattern. When you get to the very last one, the one thing that I recommend is pulling out your handy dandy spacing gauge. So use that 1/4 inch and you're going to set it right where you want to stop. And then no matter what, you want to make sure that you're going to connect right there. Okay, because if we don't, then we don't close our design. So real quickly, let's talk about aligning your spacing gauge. I had a question from one of our viewers, Lillian. Thank you for your question. And if I lay my spacing gauge, I want to be right there where I want the needle to go. The very edge of this plastic needs to be centered right where I want the needle to go. Then this flat side needs to be flush against the template. If it's canted slightly, or if the outside here is in the center like that, then I may not get the accuracy that I'm looking for. So the very, very tip right there should be right where I want the needle to go. All right, let's see if I lied. Perfect. Oh, I overshot it. Okay, no problem. Here's what we'll do. We're just going to tack that off with a few back stitches like that. Then I can just rip that one stitch out that's over. All right, and so for people that have not seen it, when we want to tie it off, we're going to lift up our needle. We've already stitched our design in, so it's fully secured. Lifting up your needle and raise up your presser foot to release all the tension. Then we're going to lengthen that bobbin thread right there, and that's going to let us pick up our bobbin right there. And the reason I like this method is I don't want to have to fumble around underneath there and find that bobbin thread and cut it. This way everything is on the top. And I'll show you. We'll just get this out of the way. So as I move this, the bobbin thread is going to go away. So did you see our bobbin thread just disappeared? Now these are the two top threads that we trimmed. So we can cut them now because they're secure, and these give ourselves a little bit of space. Whenever you're changing the sizes right here, I think it's good to do a little test to see what you're going to get. So this maybe is too far. So maybe we want something a little shallower so that the design looks like it's working together. Let's try this one. All right, so we don't want to cut into our existing design. And since we have the designs on these spaces, maybe this time we'll put the design on this one. Or maybe we could make it go around the design. I'll show you that. I think that'll look cool. So we'll line it up, and as we sew, we'll sew around like this. So you can see the top, and then that'll put a fun little detail in for the existing design. Now, the obvious question then is, can we do the full circle? Of course you can do the full circle, absolutely. The key to doing the whole circle would be that when you do it, you want to make sure that you start and end on the crosshair line. So just like we do when we have continuous circles, you may want to go ahead and go around more than one time. So you would finish the whole circle, and then you would travel to the crosshair line, and then you could move. So for this one, we'll just line it up here, and we're just going to hop over, and we'll create just a little definition around our design. Okay, pivot, just get lined up. And you can see that this makes it really easy to get a really accurate, pretty shape right around there. So it's great for making things like flowers, any kind of mandala. So let's see, we'll just make sure that we're lined up. There's a little smushing going on right there, but it's no big deal. Oh gosh, almost went the wrong way. So one of the things I recommend when you're doing it is, always checking to make sure that you're keeping your pattern. I think it's really easy sometimes to forget that I'm going down or I'm going up. So always just taking a quick look and say, okay, yeah, wait, where am I going? I'm going up. All right. And I think these would make a really fun quilt as you go, because you could do different colors, you could embellish them. So right here, we're back to our start point. So we would want to get our spacing gauge out real quick. And just like we said before, we want this edge on this side to be flush with the template. And then we'll set our needle so it's right where we want to stop. And then we'll do that last shape. All right, so we'll pull up that bobbin thread and snip these threads. Now, you can tell right away that, that's a pretty unique, fun shape. It looks awesome. And this is the part of the circle. This is a 2-inch circle. And you can see what a big difference we can make. We can make a lot of different shapes by just varying how far out we are or how close to the center we are. We could even echo this just by moving the pin. We can echo this space in here just by going from the crosshair line to the crosshair lines. So we can put a little echo in here, or we can put an echo out here. It's very, very easy to use as long as you have those really great crosshair lines that will help you. So now that we've kind of shown you the top of it and the bottom, we've shown you 2 different ways to use it. Now we're going to actually create that big design that we showed you, and we're going to show you how we move with different templates, and then there's some tips for each way that we're going to use it that'll help you get a little more out of your tools. So let me get my fabric and we'll show you what we're going to do. All right, so that is a lot of lines, right? Is that crazy? Does that look a little intimidating? So let me show you what else I've done. So this is Misty Fuse that's on the back of this, and it's, you know, it's not really sticky or anything, but what that's going to do is once we've finished our design, we can cut some layers so that the blue will be exposed in different areas. And I'll kind of show you, I did a little bit of it on this one with some thread paint like that. So what we'll do is we'll cut away different sections, and that will make the blue pop through, right? So Tracy, I'm going to answer your question. The pin that I had in the middle comes with the tools. So mine are long arm, so the pin is a little thicker. It's a little longer because the template is thicker. It's a 1/4 inch. The ones that you'll get with your high shank is just a regular pin. It's going to look like this. So it's not quite as long. And let's address that really quickly. I mean, this pin is significantly longer. And sometimes I'll see people saying, oh, I need a bigger pin. I need a longer pin. Mine pops off. Okay, I can sew with this pin perfectly well on a high shank template. It works great. And the reason I often don't recommend getting the longer one is sometimes this longer one can trap right back here on some people's machines. It can hit the foot. If the foot has a little bit of a part of it hanging out, then this can bind on there. So it's not that you can't have a longer pin, but you have to be an informed user and realize that it may work for your machine and it may not. So you would want to test that before you just, you know, go sewing. Check and make sure that you've got the clearance that you need. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll get our pin in. So I'm actually going to trick you guys. The very first one that I'm going to do is not with the pin. Wait, what? We're using the curve, the Artisan curves. What do you mean we're not going to use the pin? Okay, well, we're kind of going to use a pin, but we're going to trick you guys. So we're going to put our needle right in the center. And what does that remind you of? Does that remind you of the Spinifex maybe, something like that? So let's get our bobbin thread up. And before we start going around, I want to just do something really quickly. So I have a 6-point crosshair. I made all these lines. And what I want is I want to number them. I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we'll go all the way around. So I won't count for you because I'm sure you guys can count. So we'll just try to do it real quickly. So what's the purpose of that? So as I rotate, we're going to do this in 6 segments. And if I don't have any numbers, it's pretty easy that I might get on the wrong line. So I want to make sure that I know which line that I'm going to be aligning with. So by going ahead and making those numbers, I'm helping myself make sure that I will be able to do it correctly. So we have 24 lines and 23 right there, 24. And so since we are doing this on a 6-point, I'm just going to put a little star on every fourth one. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this is the start of the new set. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the new set. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 will get us back to the beginning. Did I miss a number? I got 24 and I got an empty one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. There we go. 21, 22, 23, and 24. There we go. Okay. So what that'll do is that'll help me make sure that I'm straight right from the get-go. That'll help me not have a problem as we go. So let's pull that thread up and we're going to get our template centered. Notice that I don't have a million stable tapes all over the place. Yeah, Susan, thank you. I skipped 20. I'm glad you found it. So just put your stable tapes around the shape, because when I'm holding, I'm going to be holding like this. This is the rotation, but while we're stitching, we're not actually rotating at all. So all you need is your stable tapes around the actual cutout that you'll be holding. Okay. And then let's see, get him in there. Got a lot of thread hanging out. I want to make sure that my thread is under there so he's not in my way. So as we talked about, each of those stars are going to be where I'll line up the template, okay, to start. So that's how I know that this is a line that needs this design on there. And part of the reason that I decided I wanted to do this, it's really got a lot of lines and it's really busy. So I'm just going to adjust my height of my foot because it was designed for one, and this has double batting. So this one is a little bit thicker. So he needed a little bit more room so I could move. Okay, and then we'll just rotate, get to our star each time. There's going to be a little bit of an overlap right there. So again, going back to why am I doing this at the beginning is there's so many lines at the beginning, and I think it would be really hard to put some, even a small design with this in the beginning and move from crosshair line, because look at how tight all those crosshair lines are. There's so many of them. Here they start to broaden out and they're easier to see. But now this will make a really fun, cute design in the center, and it will solve my problem of not having to worry about following crosshair lines that are super tight together. So I saw a question real quick about puzzle pieces. So I will answer that real quick. So there is the puzzle piece right here. You can see all of them have that. So if you're switching templates, you would want to make sure that you have a pull tab on yours. So you can see that I fold back my tape right there so that I can lift that up pretty easily if I need to take the piece on or off. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get lined up on the next one. So this is the technique right here, is using it almost like you would use a Spinifex. So knowing that you can do this and knowing that you have that option for your, interior parts of your template, I just think that's another way to get more out of these type of templates, because now you have another option, and you can do that with any of the shapes. You can do it with circles, the iris, any of them. Okay, and I think we have maybe one more to go. All right, here we go. This is such a pretty shape. So when we did the circle, we showed you the outside and the inside. So this is the natural split of the Marquee, And the marquee is the same on the top as it is on the bottom. It's a mirror. So the image of the shape is going to be the same whether you use the top or the bottom. You get this really pretty kind of a pointy flourish. Okay, let's go ahead and tie that off and then we'll show you how it looks. So that was technique number 1 for this process. And let me trim that and then we'll take this off. At this point, I'm leaving the pin right in the center, of course, because we're going to be rotating the rest of the templates around the center. So as soon as we get you that visual and we get all this trimmed off, we'll put that pin in. Doesn't that look fun? I love that. And this is with obviously the 6-point crosshair, so you can see that there are 6 lobes. So the whole design is going to focus around that 6th lobe. So if I use an 8-point crosshair or a 5-point crosshair, I'm going to get a vastly different look to my design than I would for this one. Okay, so let's get that pin in there and we'll get started. Hey babe, can you get my design notebook, which is on the floor right there? So we had a nice visual there, so we can get our pin in there real easy. Yeah, that. So I'm going to share with you guys some of my design development real quick. So let me see if I can get my big notebook up here. Ooh, let's scoot that over. There we go. All right, so you can see that my notebook right here is 24 by 18, which is perfect for a fat quarter size, if that's something you're interested in. It's just a regular, kind of like a manila paper, you know, recycled paper. But I like it because that is something that's approximately the right size for us quilters. So, and I went ahead and I showed you right here, I've done some of the design development, and these are the crosshair lines. So those would be the same size that you would have for whatever crosshair markings that you made, and you can see that I numbered mine just like I said. And then I did play in here to see if I could fit something else in here, and it really did not work for me. It was really too tight because there's so many lines coming in. And then this is how I might travel if I wanted to do some fills in there. These are just some different plays that I planned on here, and then in order for me to repeat it, let me show you what I've got up here. So I wrote my steps out and I marked what number that I would be using for each one, because you know, if you create a design and you plan it out, you want to be able to then sew it out, then it's going to be really useful to mark the numbers so you know what pin to put each different template on. So this is something you can do with your stitching line discs, and super helpful to helping you get the design that you want to have. So I'm going to answer Regina's question. Regina said, what size is my sandwich? So my sandwich is fat quarter. So this particular piece is a fat quarter size. So it'll make kind of a round size, and then there'll be a little bit of extra hanging out here. You can always, you know, do something else with that space. Of course, Linda Martindale just asked if we can have a snapshot of the drawing, and it is my intention to go ahead and publish that on Fabricated Quilts after we do our lesson today. So I'll definitely patch that on to you. Okay, so the next one, we've got our pin. So let me get our next template. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, about what we want to do as far as using the top and the bottom of the template, and I'm going to showcase a little bit of what you can do and vary it up. So if you notice on our design, it dips in here and then it extends where the little flower points are. So I'm going to put it on number 9. See if I can get it right on there, and I'm going to line that up, and I'm going to line my foot up at the top just like we did. So I want to make sure that I'm on the crosshair mark, right? So I can't be up too high. Make sure that you can get your needle right in there. Pick up your bobbin thread. All right, and we'll get ourselves right in there on that line. There we go. So here I want to sort of echo this part right here. So I'm going to come down to the bottom. And we'll go right until we get into our crosshair mark right there. Now right here, this comes up a little bit. So as we line this one up, I'm actually going to go the other way. I'm going to go over the top like that. So we're touching. And we'll go around. See if I can see my crosshair line real good. Right there, okay? So then again, now we'll go under. And we'll do this under over because that design is going to work nicely to echo the shapes that we already have. You can see that it goes kind of quickly. Let's get some of these threads out of here. Oh, those threads are just everywhere. Let me grab them. See if we can get them out of there. There we go. They're just following me around. All right, so let's see. Let's double check. So we went over, so we're going to go under this time. We'll go down on the bottom. So we're almost back to our beginning spot. A little smushing there. Now we're on the last one, and we do want to use our crosshair square, making sure that we can close our design. So we'll pull these threads a little bit tight so we can really see. And let's see. Oh, it's a little bit far. So I think I will maybe come over just a little bit more so we can pull that out just a little bit. Well, okay, let's fudge it because we're going to need to. So what I'm going to do is I need to touch here. So I'm going to come up to the top. And I'll stop on the crosshair line. And I'm going to realign there so that I can get that proper spacing. All right, so we'll just tie this off. There's always a way to fudge it, right? All right, so the technique that we just shared with this one was that ability to use the template on both sides, alternating, and create something that looks totally different and create an open space and a closed space. So a lot of times we don't think about doing that, but you can see that that really is going to create a nice, unique look. Let's see, we'll get that extra thread out of there. I'm not sure if I pulled my bobbin thread up there, but here's where we're going so far. Thanks, Lois. I'm a fudging and a smusher. It happens. Fabric moves around and it has a mind of its own. And you know what? you know, we can't worry too much about it. It's going to all look great. It's all going to work out once we're done. There's going to be so much going on and so much quilting, but isn't that kind of a funky shape? It's kind of interesting, a little bit wonky. So one of the ways that I'm going to kind of bring it back into tolerance and also create some unique echoes is with our next template, which I think is really, really a pretty template. So let me show you this one real quick. And this is where we're going to talk about the size of the template and why does the size matter? What's important about that? So let's put this one on, make sure my grips are down. This one I'm going to do at about 10.5, so one more. All right, so notice when I put this on real quick, if I line this up and I go from the top crosshair up here, I'm going to sew this entire shape, and you're going to see how we travel to the next crosshair mark. But I like this one because this is going to create a little 1/4 inch echo, because that's a 1/2 inch right there, pretty much. Let's see, we can check it. Right? So perfectly 1/2 inch right there. So as this sews the bottom, it's going to create a fun little echo right there. So let's go ahead and we'll get that one set up. So we're lined up right here at the top. And initially for this design, it doesn't really matter where we start because we are going to sew the whole thing. So, and then it just matters where we end so we can travel to the next one. Try and get my thread lined up. All right, so you can go either way. You know, it's up to you. You decide which direction that you want to go. So you can see I'm compressing, you know, here at the top, which activates these grips, and I'm holding kind of right here. So not really too much down here. If you have a long pin or if your hand's worried about that, you can just put a little piece of eraser or put that pin cover on there, and then you won't have any trouble there. All right, so we need to see our crosshair line because that's how we can move to the next one. So let's see, let's get back there. Not quite lined up. Let's see if we can do it better. We need to be able to shift a little bit more. I guess we're going to have to go back up to the midline so we can get a little bit more turn. So let's see where we are. Okay, and so here we want to put just the little topper in there. So let's go on up to here, and I'll show you what we're going to do to make this easier the next time. Okay, so right there we have a little reference, visual reference, for where we need to stop, right? So we can just put a little mark on there. Let me turn it so you can see a little bit too. So we're going to be just on the inside there, just like we are there. And once we turn it, if we don't have enough room, we can just shift it over a little bit more and come on down. So that'll get us there. Now this one is the one we're doing the whole thing. So we want to try to kind of stop at the same space on this other side so that we can get there. This is the widest part right here. So that'll get us lined up, and we should be pretty close to the line that we made. So we'll kind of come up to the top and we'll put this little topper in there. Okay, here we go. So just to reiterate, the little pen that I used to make those reference marks, It's a vis-a-vis marker, which is a wet erase marker. And the wet erase marker is great because it doesn't make any lasting marks on your quilt. Okay. Looks like we need one more stitch right there. There we go. Let me get these pesky threads out of there. I can see he wants to be in the show, but he's making me angry. All right, so let's go on back over to this side. So right here, we're going to kind of aim for our cross mark so we can get lined up. There we go, a little smushing right there. So this is where we're doing the entire shape, so you really get that flavor here of the whole shape of this iris. And one of the unique pieces about the iris is different on the top and the bottom. So if we do the bottom, we're going to get kind of like almost a circle, but a little bit elongated here on this half. And if we just do the top, we're going to get sort of that marquee shape that is got that flower fluting that's kind of on the top like that. He just needs 1 or 2 more stitches every time to make him fit. There we go. Let's see. All right, and then we can tie that off with a few stitches right there. Oh, lost my scissors. There we go. So there's our bobbin thread. He just disappeared. We'll go ahead and snip that and get those tied off. And we can get these threads. Since those are all stitched over, you can kind of see where we're going. So you can see that now we have that more traditional shape. And now I can cut this area and have my little blue can show through, or I can cut this area and have the blue show here. You can cut these smaller areas, or you can cut the larger leaf openings, and that'll make really a big difference. And this, you can see the difference here. You've got the same sort of shape on the top and the bottom, and that iris is going to have that round bulb on the bottom and more of this pointy shape. And it's not as curvy either here. This is going to dip in a little bit more, whereas this is just a little bit of a curve, very slight right there. All right, so let's see. Working pen, I'm just checking really quickly so I can see if, as I sew, it's hard to see some of the questions. I did sew hand heart, so this is new. So Clarissa, welcome. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. It's pretty fun. So I encourage you to go to Sew Steady or any of our ruler work educator support groups. And a lot of them will have some beginning techniques like how to set your foot height, how to make sure that you're checking your tension, how to troubleshoot if you're having some problems, how to put your stable tapes on. The stable tapes are really important. I'll reiterate that you want them where you're going to be holding onto the template, and it should be somewhat close to the foot. Like, we don't want to be holding way out here or holding on one side, because that'll pop the ruler up like that. We want to have that nice flat appearance. Also, if you're holding like this, you know, pressing down, this is the anvil that you just put on your whole quilt, and nothing can move because you're just putting all that weight on there. So my thing is, relax. You just need to relax. Don't put so much pressure. Just hold firmly. As long as your hand isn't moving on the quilt and your hand is holding, then the ruler's not going to be moving either. All right, so let's see. Melissa Norton. So for these templates, they have to pivot. So these would be very tricky to do on a frame long arm, but they absolutely work fabulously on a sit-down long arm. These are one of the few templates that might be a little extra challenging, since your actual sewing machine would be moving on the frame. These are not recommended for that style. It's be a lot more work to get the designs for that. So let's see. Okay, let's see. All right. I'm so glad that you guys are enjoying the video classes. Okay, so I'm talking, I know, but so I know that this looks kind of messy because we have so many lines. So let's flip it over. Let me hold on to this pin. And let me show you the back a little bit. So I do have kind of a low volume color, but you know, it looks really messy on the other side, but look at how beautiful it looks on this side. You know, it looks really nice and clean. You get this nice puff. You don't have all those lines. Even if we had some little fudging, you can't even see it. It's totally fine. It looks great. So, you know, I think that sometimes when we're working and we have all these markings and lines and chalk, and it just looks really kind of erratic, but it looks terrific when it's all done. And you just got to look forward to that aspect of it and not worry so much about, you know, the interim process. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's add something else. Let me grab my Marquee really quickly. That's the one that we started with. And let me check my numbers. So this one we're going to do at 14.5. And notice that we still got a little dip in here. So we have the ability to put something that dips further in, so we can do the full shape of the Marquee right there. So let's get it lined up. So you can see just right away, this is going to bring our design out much further. This is almost touching the opening right there. There's about 1/4 inch space in between right there. But then we will be sewing up a little bit. So we'll get a little bit of a gap between the existing design and the design that we're adding in. So you can see I have some reference marks on this one already, and I'll talk about how I made those so you can see what you might want to try. So when I did it on paper, I was able to see where the next lobe would have been. Like, I could sew the whole thing in on paper, and I could see where the reference lines were going to connect for the next one. So using that, I was able to put these marks in, and that helped me have the reference line for when I want to go to the next design. Okay, so we are going to sew up to about that line. That's going to be our transition. And it's going to be better if we're a little short than if we're a little tall. And I'll show you why. So you can see what we want is we want to get lined up right there. So we want to make sure that we're going to match up, right? So now we can come up here. And we're going to short it on this side. And then as we align, we can see if we need more. So let's just do a couple stitches at a time. So I need one more. There we go. And now we can line this up, and we see how our reference line isn't exactly perfect. So that's why I think that as you do that next one to move over and just do this top part, you don't want to overshoot it, because what will happen if you overshoot it, let me show you. Right, so this is the part of the design we're doing right here. We're doing the full shape, and then we have to kind of travel up, and then we're going to go over. If we overshoot it, it's going to look like this, right there. You know, so if we go too far and then we're inside where the rotation is, it's better if we do 1 or 2 stitches at a time, get it lined up, and then stitch. And that will help correct this problem, make sure that you don't have that. Okay, so let's see. So we're lined up right here. So this one, we're going to sew the whole shape, and this is inside of that space right there, inside the dip. Okay, close the design, and we'll travel back across the top. Now we've got to get it lined up on the next one, so we don't want to go too far, and we look perfect right there. That looks real good. Make sure that the ruler foot is touching. Now this side is the tricky one. We don't have anything out here as a reference, so we'll take, I think, maybe 2 more. And then when I turn it, if I can't get all the way, I'll just take 1 or 2 stitches at a time until I can get it. And now it's touching perfectly. There's no over stitching here, and I'm ready to just put my next shape right in. So one thing I would recommend if you're doing something like this style, try to make sure that you keep the same path right here as far as the overstitching. So mine are all going to be overstitched on the top, not on the bottom. And you don't want to do like mix 2 top, 2 then a bottom, then the top, then 2, you know, whatever. Create a path, and that will help give you the best visual appeal. So right now I'm lined up here, but the foot's not touching, so I'm just going to stitch back up the line until the foot is touching. And then here's where we got to do it a little cautiously. Don't go crazy. So it looks like I need 1 more stitch. And the reason some of that can vary, it depends if you have a really accurate crosshair mark. So like if you made your line on the right side of the crosshair mark and this one's on the left, there may be just a slight gap, and that can make a difference when you're trying to be super accurate like that. So that's why I recommend that you go ahead and use my method of, you know, easing yourself in to that design so you can have a really nice clean look. So the technique that we're sharing here is how you can fudge it a little bit, I guess is the word, and use the top of the design even if you don't necessarily have a particular reference to go by. So, you know, we're just moving 1 crosshair mark at a time, and we're just moving a few stitches at a time, and it's pretty easy to move back and forth between those, which is super convenient.
A couple people have asked what thread are you using?
So thanks for asking. So today the thread that's on the top is Artisan, and it's 40 weight, I believe. It's variegated 40 weight. And then the thread that I'm using on the bottom is Accredited, and it's really, really fine. Just regular, like a lot of people think of it as embroidery thread. It's 40 weight 3-ply. So this is the bottom, and this is kind of a low contrast to the back fabric. So I'll get texture, but the thread isn't really going to show. But on here, the reason I use this variegated thread is because we're going to be cutting some of the black away, and this blue then will match the fabric that's underneath there so vibrantly. So that'll give us a little bit of added detail to have the dark blue thread and then have the cutaway on the top. All right, so I'm lined up. So let me show you. I'm a little bit away right there. I'm not quite touching. So before I start sewing on the ruler, I want to make sure that I'm touching. Oh, I went the wrong way. Okay, I'm going this way. So here's where we're going to grade it in. Let's be a little careful. Make sure that we're not overshooting it, just 1 or 2 at a time. perfect. And that helps us not to have kind of a weird little jog on that side where we overstitch it and then we have a little bit of thread hanging out over our design. On this side, once we sew this whole one, it doesn't matter because we can travel back up this design if we need to. Like right there, if I need to, I can travel back up. But on that other side, we don't have that luxury. There is nothing there for us to travel back up. So we have to be a little bit cautious as we get onto that side. And he's touching perfectly there, so I'm totally ready to go. So you can see that as you get out to a broader portion of the mandala, as you go further away from the center, you have a lot more lobes that you're going to have to put in. And so you can see right now, this is 24, but you can see why it's important to have more lines, because as the pie wedge gets bigger, you're not going to be able to put some little skinny guy in there really easily. Like if you wanted to use this one, this is such a narrow space, and you can just imagine if I'm trying to move crosshair to crosshair, well, he doesn't even span the width of these two crosshairs right there. He would have to be much closer to the center. So if I wanted to use this, I might even need more lines in here to segment these wedges so that I could use something like this further out from the center. So that's just something to think about. And if having a lot of lines bothers you initially, maybe when you do the center, you just put in a few lines, put in, you know, your 8 lines or your 12 lines. And then as you get further out, you could in, because then they won't be so close together. So visually, they won't be as much of a problem for you. So let's see where we are. All right, so again, we'll have to stitch back up. Oh, I keep wanting to go the wrong way. I keep wanting to go around the design, and we're not there. I'm getting distracted. One more stitch on that one. So you can a lot closer to the reference line than some of the others were, so maybe that line is just a little bit off compared to some of the other ones, and that can happen. Remember that all of these chalk lines are going to go away, so after we're all done, you won't see any of those. And even if the design is, you know, slightly skewed, which is common, nobody's going to see that. You're not going to be able to tell that that is the case. Okay, go. It's time. That's the one I keep wanting to sew down and around the bottom, but we don't want that.
Let's focus here. A little bit blurry.
All right. Thank you, honey. He's getting me all straight. So I'm going to get some of these threads pulled away here because they're getting stitched in, so we want them out of our way. All right, so while I'm finishing up these last little bits, I'm going to ask Honey if he's got some questions for us.
Was the thread on the first one, the first sample that you did, the same as the thread that you just told everybody about?
Yeah, I didn't change the thread. It is the same, and it looks different because, let me grab it, because the fabric is different. So the fabric really makes a big difference to how the thread shows. So this color is actually sort of closer. It doesn't contrast as much. This magenta and this blue, they are very sympathetic. You know, they blend well together. But on the black, the white that is in here, there's kind of like a bluish white thread in the variegated that shows up. And on this one, you can really see that. So if you look here, this is the lighter color right here, and you can see that really shows, whereas the darker, you know, blends more into the black. So really color matters, makes a big difference. So let's see. So what else, sweetie pie? Anything? All right, so I'm lined up. So remember, get yourself all the way up so that your foot is touching. And as we come down here, we'll test it first. Oh, not quite. That one might need a few more. He looked a little bit further away, didn't he? Yep, one more. See, I can never tell why it doesn't fit exactly, but that doesn't really matter. As long as you can adjust the design and get what you want, that's really what matters. Touch, close our design. Ah, perfect. So this is just our top right there. So you can see we're getting kind of close to the edge right there, to the edge of our fat quarter quilt sandwich. So you can see it's pretty easy to fudge that. I mean, you're just pivoting a tiny bit. And I think, let's see, we'll smush that one a little bit since I went too far. And notice that this particular rotation doesn't even connect with the previous ones. It's not actually touching any of the previous parts of the design. So this one is kind of a freestanding ring. He's not actually even connected to any of the remaining elements that we've stitched before. He's all by himself. So it takes just a little bit of patience to get yourself around. There we go, good enough. And the reason that I want to create little spaces, you know, that overlap is that'll give me more areas that I can trim away and reveal more of the blue. And so I want that because I want to kind of create that two-tone look. So when Leonie West did her initial one, she actually had 3 different colors. She had black and white and I think purple. And the video where she showcases that, I believe that is still on YouTube, and it uses the circle collection, and it is really fabulous. So if you like this style, you should definitely check out her video because it's pretty fantastic. All right, so we are done. So right here, we would want to connect up the dots right there, make sure that we're tied off, and we'll put a few stitches right in there. Get that tacked in. All right, there's that bobbin thread, and we'll get him trimmed off. Let's see. There we go. So notice that bobbin is just going to walk away. Once we trim him, he disappears underneath. And this is all tacked off, so we can cut these threads. All right, so now I'm going to share another unique way to use this. And it's all about not necessarily saying the template has to be used this way or that way. It doesn't matter. There's lots of ways that you can use any of our templates, and I always want to encourage you to use them in more ways than one. So let's flip it real quick. We'll give you the visual so you can see how we're doing. And in fact, I'll go ahead and I'll take the pin out because we're actually going to show you a way that we don't need it. But doesn't that look great? And then just imagine that on the front, we'll have all the black cleaned up and we'll have beautiful big pops of color where that vibrant teal is going to show through. All right, so let's see. I'm going to, somebody asked about me using gloves. I'm going to comment on that. Sheila, thank you so much for being here today. I don't recognize your name, but nice to meet you. I had a car accident in 2016, and it was pretty significant, and I lost some feeling in my hands. If I put gloves on, I can't feel things very well. I can't feel the sensation of the ruler, of the fabric. I think gloves are great. I think they're really helpful. They're just like, you know, a stable tape, so they're helping you connect to the ruler. But for myself, I don't wear them, and that's why. So if you feel like it is something that would help you, I absolutely recommend that. It's somebody, you know, designed that for quilters, and I've used them in the past, and I found them to be very helpful. So if you feel like those work for you, or you need a little bit more, you know, stick, then that might be something great to try. And those are also really great for free motion as well. So I'm going to comment on Cheryl Lewis. She says, are my feed dogs down or up? Okay, I love this controversy. Okay, so we're going to talk about that for a second. So I have my glider on. If I have my glider on and the glider is covering my feed dogs, are the feed dogs doing anything? They are not. They can't do anything because they're covered. And we do have other gliders that do have the feed dogs exposed. However, I believe that you need to teach yourself this technique in the way that you want to go forward. So you might as well start how you mean to go on rather than have that interim step. The feed dogs are designed to move the fabric that way towards the back of the machine. If I want to go that way, then I'm just fighting against myself as it's trying to push the machine fabric that way, right? And if I try to go this way, it's trying to go that way. And if I try to go this way, it's fighting me tooth and nail because it doesn't want to go that way. Now, I have seen this controversy a lot. People are like, oh, it's great. I use it. It works perfect. Yeah, it works perfect if you're going that way, okay? But I really recommend if you're using a glider, you don't ever have your feed dogs up because let me show you what happens when that happens. See all of that right there? If you have your feed dogs up, then your glider is going to get chewed up by those. So I don't recommend that. Okay, so that's that question. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. I love the Jackie Brascom. I love the curved marquee too. That's one of my favorites. That was such a great one that they came out with that project for because I don't think I would have bought it otherwise, but I love it. It's awesome. Yes, Lillian, I am looking through the hole in the foot right here to make sure that my needle is lined up with my last stitch when I tack off. So that helps me get a little bit more visibility as I'm looking in there and making sure that the needle is tracking on the stitch line in order to tack off. So that way I don't have stitches in some wonky area. Okay. So I think we're caught up. So let me show you this last one. Let's flip this over. So this is really a big giant circle. Look at that. It's huge, right? And I don't have a really big, huge space, but I like the curvature of this for this space, right? But if I just put this out here like this, maybe it won't line up exactly how I want it. Because, I mean, it's kind of far. If you look, I want this to be like this. I want this tip right here. Oh, my son just came home and he doesn't know to be quiet because I'm taping. But honey is taking care of it, so we're going to ask him to be quiet. So you can tell here this does not fit. So what do I do, right? So I have made this random alignment rule right here. So I'm going to put my circle where it touches on two spots right there. Now remember that this is a symmetrical shape. So it doesn't matter as long as it's touching right there. This arc is going to be the same on every one of those no matter what. It's not about having the center lined up or not. As long as we touch here and here, this curve will match the next pie wedge, all the way around. So I'm going to set the ruler in place first. And I'm going to answer the obvious question, right? Somebody's going to say, well, can I just use a different arc, a different circle? Of course. You can use whatever you want. I could take this other arc like this, and I could do the same thing. I could take my 12-inch spacing gauge, and I could do the same thing. But because we are demonstrating these tools and how we can do it, I wanted to share that. Notice how some of the grips here are off of the quilt? Well, it might be more effective to go like that, right? So we'll go ahead and we'll get it lined up so it's touching in those two spots. And again, I'm going to use the same crosshair marks, and I'm going to get my thread picked up. By placing the ruler first, now I know that this is accurate because right there it's touching in those two spots. And now I can just start sewing to the crosshair line. stopping on the line, and then readjusting again. This is already in position here, and then I'm just going to make this touch right there, and that's going to give me an automatic 1/4 inch spacing, and it has strong visual marks so I know exactly where I need to start and where I need to stop. And if I wanted to make the spacing bigger, I could just make a point. I could make a dot like a 1/2 inch above or a 1/4 inch above, and I could line the template up on those marks. So it's not that I can only make a 1/4 inch. I could make it bigger. That would require more marking. So I'm lazy, and we're going to do it the lazy way. Okay, let me get these threads out of there again. Make sure you're touching right there. Make sure the ruler's in place. And again, like I said, it doesn't matter what the orientation is here because this arc will be the same. It's going to be fine. So we'll just try to keep it in view for you guys. So you can see this will go pretty quickly. You'll be able to get this arc in here pretty easily. And notice I don't have to pivot my sandwich. I mean, I often do when we're on the video, and most of that is for you, for visibility. But you can see that I can put these circles in here, and it's not necessary for me to rotate the sandwich, just like it isn't necessary for me to rotate the sandwich when I'm using the Artisan curves. So let's talk for a minute about making curves and circles on your fabric. So recently, I saw somebody was commenting on my Ruler Work support group, and they were talking about not purchasing circles because they have the circles and straights or circles on, attachment for their machine. So the circle attachment for your machine and our circles and straights from So Steady, both of those pin this fabric to your machine. The attachment screws in and there's a peg, and if you're using, you know, my table like this, the pin is actually through the machine and the fabric is rotating around in a circle. Because we're using templates on the top and we have a centering pin, we can put our design anywhere on the quilt that we want. But if you had a king size quilt, you're not going to put the circles and straights attachment and try to quilt with that on a full size quilt because the quilt essentially is pegged. So are you going to try to rotate your large whole quilt to make a circle? So those tools are both excellent, but they are not interchangeable. They do not do the same thing. Anytime that you have any of our pin-driven templates like these, you have the freedom to move your sandwich essentially anywhere you want. You're not pegged onto your table or onto your circle attachment. So there's quite a bit more freedom with having the template on the top to make a shape than there is with the circles attachment. So just something to think about. It's not that you should have one or the other. I think they're both good, but they are not one over the other. They are different tools that do different things. Okay, so let's see. So should we stop? Are you guys done? Can I play in my garden? Oh, you like my flowers? Love it. You can come over.
Saying Lillian wanted to plant a money tree in the garden.
A money tree? Yes, I want to play in that garden too. All right, so let's see. Let me talk about one more thing. So we do have this as a collection. So this is the circle, and this particular set, let me put up all of my circles for you to see really quick. Some of them are super tiny. This one is, let's see how big that one is. 3-inch circle, 2-inch circle, and let me grab these other ones. And then this one is a 1/2-inch circle and a 1-inch circle. And I think there's 5 in this. I think I'm missing one. I'm not sure where he went. But there's 5 pieces that come as a set that you can buy. And that set was designed from what Leonie West did with her video when she initially released the Artisan Curve template. So I think that these can be purchased as a set. All of the other ones, you would be purchasing them singly. So I have several of these of the tulips. So this is a skinny one. This one's fatter. And let me grab the other two. Can you grab that one right there? Oh, is there one more? I thought there was one more, like this shape. So you can see that
Marquee.
they look so different. So this distance across is really what influences how many partitions that you have on your pie. So when you're looking at that, you want to think about this distance. And if you're only going to get one or two, I don't recommend getting the really skinny ones because I think those create a lot more work for you. I would get something that has a little bit more beef to it. Like this one, or maybe there's one in between those two that would be good. So as you're playing with that, you want to think about that. Now, let me show you something else that anytime that you have like a circles on quilts or a spin effects template, I could see integrating these type of templates for the center and then making the mandala rings with the artisan curves around something like this. That would give you a lot of flexibility to be able to create amazing designs by combining tools that you already have and then adding the mandala to sort of create a bigger design that would cover a bigger space or a larger block. This sews out at 7.5, but if I did a few rings with my artisan curves, and you can see that the shape's kind of a little bit, matchy, but then you get the bottom of the design. So these would be a great opportunity to use them together and just get an amazing design. So I'm gonna comment on Miles Junkie. She asked, how do you get over multiple layers of seams? Okay, you know what? That is a tricky question, and there is no easy answer for that. So let me scoot these over. So something that you can do if you need a little bit more room is you can use a compensating plate right around the back of the foot, but it's very tricky. You have to be really careful, where it would just basically lift your foot up just a tiny bit, enough to hold that so that you can get that seam over there. Another thing that you can do is you can actually lift your foot. You can unscrew the foot and raise it up and move it. On my machine, I have the ability to change the height of the presser foot right here by a button. Not just presser foot pressure, but I have different ruler work settings on my machine, so I can actually go from a light pressure to a medium pressure. It is a little tricky, I'm not gonna lie. That is a challenge. One of the ways to manage that that's better than trying to manipulate the foot itself is to make sure that when you're building your quilt, if you have something where the seams have the potential to be really bulky and to have, like 8 seams coming in all at the same time, you need to manage that seam before you get it to the quilting stage. Maybe press this seam open or hammer that seam a little bit with the seam mallet to make it flatter. Make sure that you really manage those seams really well so that you don't have as much of a problem. And the other piece of that is I often will choose a quilting design that is specifically designed to go around a bulky seam. So, for example, if this was sewn in and there was a big bulky seam right in the middle like that, I would not choose this design. I would choose a design that has a little bit of an openness in the center, and then the design goes around that seam, and that would be something that would help you not have that big of a problem as you try to manipulate on your fabric. So I know that that's quite a few different things, but hopefully maybe 1 or 2 of those ideas will help you. Kimberly Hahn is asking, what is my machine? I love my sewing machine, but I'm always reluctant to answer that because I want you to love your machine. I am sewing on a Janome, but I have sewn on almost every brand out there in the industry, almost every one. And almost every manufacturer out there has the capability of doing ruler work and having it look fantastic. If you don't love your machine, try a different machine or a different brand. But, you know, a lot of times it's just getting comfortable with how it feels with ruler work and being able to, you know, get your relationship with your machine so that it can work better. I will tell you that better tools make better products. So having great templates works really well. Having the correct ruler foot for your machine works really well. Having a glider is essential. Having a spacing gauge really helps. Having stable tape on your templates is essential to having a good design outcome. All those things really make a big difference. Can you do it without some of those things? Yes, you can, but you cannot do it without a ruler foot, and a more accurate template is going to give you a better design. Okay, so let's see. All right. Alrighty, so guys, I think that we have answered. I'm just going to go through the questions really quick. Let's make sure. Do you get a paycheck? For us that have been blessed by you, do you get a paycheck? Janice Tucker, thank you for asking. I am not paid for my Sew Steady work on our Facebook Live. I don't think any of our educators are. For us, it's the opportunity to share our passion, and then, you know, like, so I have a book out there, Fun and Fancy is the book that I designed for Sew Steady that goes with the Fun and Fancy collection, and that's something paid for. You know, we enjoy our work, and we do have the opportunity to work in the field, but COVID has really put a damper on that. So, you know, I'm grateful that I get to share Sundays with you guys, and you know, it's helping me to be creative and to keep thinking about new ideas, and having somebody to share that with and somebody that is interested in that, that is really hugely valuable. So thank you so much for your kind words, and thank you for asking that. But I'm good. I'm all good, and I'm glad to be sharing with you guys. So if you can help somebody else out there who's not in a good spot, that's awesome. Then I encourage you to do that if you are able to. All right, so let's see. I'm just going to scroll really quickly, make sure. If you have a question that has not been answered and you just are dying to get an answer, put it in there right now. I'll give you a minute. Let's see. Hi. Thanks, Regina. I'll tell my son that you said hi. His name is Ryan. All right. Okay, guys. Well, I hope that you will have a wonderful Sunday evening, and I will post the design with the numbers on it. If you're interested, it says the name of the template, and then we'll have the alignment number. And so then that picture will be on Fabricated Quilts. And then also on Friday, I'll be doing some free motion development, and I already have a sequence for it, but I may show you some ideas for, this is that thread painting, and this is just using the same thread here. This is just a single layer of batting, right? So it's not doubled. But, you know, how do you fill this in so that you can get kind of a unique look? So whenever I am going to cut my quilt, like once I finish the design and I'm going to cut so that the blue is exposed, the one tip I want to give you is I want you to go through and I want you to mark every area that you're going to cut with a little X. I'll show you. Right? So if I was, let's say I was going to cut this right here, this part, and the blue would be under this, then I would go through and I would put an X on every one of these little areas. And the reason for that is the very first time that I did this, I sewed this beautiful mandala, and I was trimming it for my template method, and I cut a section that didn't require cutting. Oh, and I was just like, oh my gosh, what happened? And I was able to fix it by shuffling the design, but it didn't look how I wanted, and it was really frustrating, and I couldn't put the fabric back together. So if you're going to use the template method, I want you to finish all your stitching. Then I want you to go through and carefully mark every section that you want to trim away with some type of visual moniker. And then before you cut, you look at your little moniker and you look at the whole thing and say, am I cutting the right spot? Am I exposing the right color? And then you cut. So you double check, just like carpentry, double check, and then you cut. So this will be really important if you're going to be doing that template method to make sure that you're getting the design that you want to have. Alrighty. So it's Sunday and we're having family dinner, and I hope you guys are having something wonderful too. I will see you later in the week, Fridays, Free Motion Fridays, and then next Sunday, I don't know what we're doing. I'll think of something, and I'll try to put some notes out there ahead of time in case somebody's interested. Always, if you have something you're interested in, please share that with me, because I'm happy to try to do something if I know that that is something you're interested in. So I love your suggestions. Have a great night.